Hey guys, Lee here from straightwoo.com with the full moon in Sagittarius reading. Before I get into that, just a couple of house announcements. Number one, thank you so much for all of you that wrote me and emailed me to say, what is wrong with your microphone? So I had microphone problems weeks ago. I thought I fixed them. Um, and I think I fixed it now. You guys should be able to hear me now, and I won't be like whispering the full and new moon readings anymore. But thank you, really, thank you so much for telling me because I obviously don't listen to myself. I would have never have known. Thank you so much. Number two, I am going on holiday. Yes, holiday. Even astrologers take holiday. June 1st to 8th. I should be by that time all caught up on readings and things like that that need to be sent out. But just to let you know that I'm really going to take that time quite often, quite away from email and the digital world and that kind of stuff. So in case you book a reading, book the lunar cycle class or anything like that, and you don't hear from me, just know that I will get back to you when I get back from holiday. And I'll have an out of office message anyway, so you guys will know that. Point number three, the lunar cycles class. Already got a number of people signed up. The next class will start June 13th. There's a link here in the description. So if you want to take a look at what I really consider something I'm really proud about this class, because it's both a deep dive into the moon mythologically. It's a deep dive into astrological concepts and to kind of familiarize with those things. But we learn about astrology in that sense via the moon, via taking a journey with the moon in our chart, by house, by natal aspect, by sign, all of that kind of stuff. And then we end up learning how to interpret the new and full moons for ourselves. And I am overjoyed when I see this working. Just yesterday and today, people were in our private Facebook group interpreting their own new and full moons and really well, like really good interpretations that I'm super proud of. So if you'd like to be part of that, come along, join the fun. Now, full moon in Sagittarius. So new moon in Taurus was pretty important, pretty good moon. And there was a lot happening that time in that go round because of Uranus newly entered into Taurus. There's something similar happening in the background of this full moon. So really on the basic level, this is a full moon in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is a super fun sign. I often describe Sagittarius in this way. Of the fire signs, there's three different kinds. There's cardinal, fixed, and mutable. Cardinal signs start or initiate things. They kind of have a kind of strong peak strike that kind of gets things going. It's the kind of energy that you use one of those things, flints, to kind of create a spark, or like that force and effort to kind of light a match when you first strike it. And then you've got that flame. You can use it to apply to other things. That's spirit. There's a lot of energy there. And that's Aries. Fixed fire is when we take fire, but we stabilize it. We control it. We make it more friendly. It's more maintained. It's not as wild and kind of all over the place. Fixed fire is Leo. And things I think about there are more like a campfire, a fireplace, a hearth, somewhere where we've taken fire and we've put a boundary about it. And equally something I'm always thinking about in Leo's fabulous sign, and it's been fabulous having the North Node and the eclipses in Leo for this reason. It's an expressive personal sign, and it really connects to people. It rules the heart. Leo rules the heart. It really connects to people by heart, by the heart space. And around things like fires, campfires, and hearths are where people gather to share moments like that. So I think that's very indicative of what Leo is about. Now, Sagittarius. Sagittarius is mutable fire. Mutable fire is change, action, dynamism, giving way to something. Whereas cardinal starts something, mutable gives way, because all mutable signs come during a time in the year or between seasons when we are no longer fully in spring, for example, but we're moving towards summer. Spring gives way to summer. Mutable fire is like a freaking firework, a Roman candle that swirls up into the air and goes a million miles and then gets lost in your neighbor's yard. That is Sagittarius. Y'all got energy for days. You don't know limits. You don't know boundaries. If you do know them, you don't like them. And there's a lot of expansiveness and optimism and generosity with Sagittarius, which is something really to be admired. There's always the sense that they're brimming. It's not even that the cup is half full. It's like it runs over, and it runs over for me and for you and for everybody else. There's this real genuine bone deep sensitivity and excitement for other people and what you're doing and the things that you're accomplishing. Sagittarians are a fab friend to have in your corner because, or Sag, ascendant in Sag, moon in Sag, because they're the first person to yell, yes, when you're doing really good. And the first person, if you're doing bad, to go, fuck those people, so really, really fun sign. So in general, we can say that a full moon in Sagittarius has a lot of that generosity of spirit and energy and excitement and joie de vivre kind of built into it. It's a hopeful full moon. It's a fun full moon. So what you're going to want to do eventually is look at the part of your chart that's ruled by Sagittarius to know where it's happening, where it's unfolding, to know more. But I'm going to describe, and you'll know more if you were to take the moon class. But I am going to describe a little bit of this chart. I'm going to just check in with some of the comments. Oh, hello, Rebecca Christie. Long time no chat. So would love to know how it would affect me. I'm Aquarius. So there's some stuff happening in Aquarius. Hard to know without knowing your rising sign or your ascendant sign. If you know that, Rebecca, you can just comment it and I'll let you know. But knowing that the rising sign or the ascendant sign would let me know more particularly where it would be happening in your chart and therefore why it would affect you in a certain way or not. But I can tell you this. Aquarius has been getting the rough end of the stick for some time, maybe about 18 months. Not the whole 18 months the entire time. We can't blame everything on one astrological aspect, but the South Node has been there kind of draining that sign. Oh, that's okay, Rebecca. Don't worry. If you don't know your ascendant sign, not a big deal. But the South Node has been there kind of flushing out that sign for quite some time. And eclipses have been happening across Aquarius and Leo. That's always turbulent. And then this year, the Mars-Uranus squares, which can be interesting, quite pumped up with energy and with drive to change and drive to innovate, but also Mars. Mars is going to be dipping in and out of your sign a couple times in the next few months, and that can create conflicts, or it can create drive and ambition, and even energy to create something, but it can also go the other way. It can create conflicts. And so I'm going to just catch up with some more comments here. Curious about Sag in the North Node. Glad to catch you live. Hi, Angela. Thank you. Thank you so much. Sag and North Node. If you have the North Node in Sagittarius, it's possible that this full moon is happening around your North Node. And that would also mean that it's possible that the North Node by transit is trining your North Node natally. What's really quite nice about that is the North Node is a point of expansion or increase. It's very important as part of this full moon. So there's a real potential for growth or for increase. And it usually feels quite touched, or like you've been touched by like a little bit of good luck. It feels quite nice when aspects to the North Node are made. And I'm just going to go back up here. Rebecca, you've given me your birth date there. If you punch it into astro.com, and I've got instructions on my website for everybody that wants to know and find their birth chart. I've got under tools on my website, there is a post, how to make your birth chart. It's also on my YouTube page. And you just punch in all your information and it should check it out for you. So that's always good to know. Oh, hello, wavy emoji from Shannon Moody. Rachel Hernandez, how about Virgos? Again, same like Rebecca Christie. I need to know what your rising sign is, but we could say potentially if we put Virgo on the first house of the wheel, that the full moon would be happening in your fourth house of home, parents and childhood. Jane, hello Lee, hope you're well. Sag rising here. Ooh, Sag rising, that's a good one. Hopeful little friend there. Cancer sun, Cap moon. I'm hoping I will be okay. So yeah, I think you're more than okay. I think there's some really good aspects between a Sag rising person, so that means Sagittarius is in the first house, and the ninth house, which is astrology, spirituality, higher education, continuing education, all kinds of courses like that. So anything you're doing in that kind of space, Jane, kind of crack on with it. That's always a good thing. And I'm going to go back now to diving into what's actually happening in the chart. I'll kind of dot around and answer some questions as we go if they're there and if it makes sense. So real talk, when I was going to name, like, because I try to think of a catchy title whenever I'm doing these videos. When I was thinking of the full moon in Sagittarius, I literally almost named it Wet Dreams as a tongue-in-cheek thing, but I thought that would get caught in like every algorithm ever on every social media platform ever. And the reason being is that, as I just described to someone else, this moon is in contact with the North Node. That's really positive. It shows increase. It shows growth and expansion and being magnetized and pulled towards something that will foster growth. So that's one thing. The second thing is that this moon, the full moon in Sagittarius, is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, ergo, Jupiter is the lunation ruler. We look to Jupiter to see what else is happening in this chart. We always pay attention to the moon, but the lunation ruler is the second point of call. So Jupiter in this chart is retrograde in Scorpio, making a beautiful harmonious trine to Neptune in Pisces. And this is kind of significant from my point of view. Again, was going to call it Wet Dreams. The reason being is Neptune is a watery, misty, foggy kind of planet. Often Neptune is Poseidon in the Greek Roman litany of gods. So Jupiter trine Neptune. Why is this important? First of all, in astrology, we have something we call outer planet aspects. The outer planets are Jupiter and going further out. So Jupiter, Sagittarius, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. And usually as astrologers, when we're looking at the year for 2018 or 2019, any given time span, and indeed in transit readings, we're going to look at the outer planets and how they communicate with one another. Do those look good? Do those look bad? Do they look fruitful? What kind of dynamic is that going to create? Give you an example. Sagittarius squared Neptune a couple years ago. Saturn squared Neptune. Saturn is boundaries and discipline and like what's solid and what's real. Neptune is the ideal and fantasy and what cannot be, have a boundary put on it. When those two guys were not getting along, we saw the rise of fake news. News, very Saturn, very concrete, journalism, reporting, boundaries, discipline. Neptune, fantasy, falseness, deception, illusion. They intersect poorly, equals fake news. Jupiter trine Neptune is one of the only outer planet transits we have for 2018. So unusually in 2018, we don't really have a lot of outer planet actions. They're not really communicating to each other that much. The only big things that have happened this year are Chiron into Aries and Uranus into Taurus, which we talked about a couple weeks ago. So Jupiter trine Neptune. Jupiter makes things bigger. It explodes things. It enlarges things. One way I've heard this described before is also that it palpates something, that it kind of like brings something up to the surface. I really like that as a description. And Neptune is the ideal. But it's the ideal that's possibly on a pedestal, that's maybe not all too grounded or real. It's the world of fog and mist. It's quite, in some ways, a disassociated space. Because when we're caught in this very foggy, misty realm, we are not our most immediate selves. We are pushed back just ever so slightly out of our normal ego waking consciousness, and we are less assimilated with and associated with who we are. Now, some of that's good. Neptune can be good for this because it can successfully and positively disconnect us from our ego and allow something else to enter. That can be healing, that can be a transcendental experience, that could be something very spiritual. It could just be a softening of the personality or the persona in a way that makes everything slightly more calm and slightly more soothing. Yet if we're caught in a fog or in the mist, we can't see. Our perceptions are not clear. They're probably not best to be depended on at this time. And equally in the fog with so much, with the inability to see clearly, we can be deceived. We can be betrayed. So this is my thing about Jupiter and Neptune. I think Jupiter and Neptune working across Scorpio and Pisces in water signs are allowing for deep healing, for guidance, for spirituality, for the increase of the same. I think this is happening with people moving more and more to New Age things, to alternative practices, people returning to ancient rituals, whether that's something shamanic or people getting into goddess lore or goddess work. I think a lot of people are finding different ways to connect with something higher and more ascendant or more transcendent than themselves, or how they view themselves to be, because I kind of think that all people are transcendent. But there's a sense of something greater, of reaching and expanding ourselves and reaching something greater, something better. So this is what's building in the back of this chart. The full moon itself is pretty quiet. It's making this lovely aspect to the North Node, though, so there's a great point of increase possible across the parts of your chart ruled by Leo and Sag. And then secondly to that, across the parts of the chart ruled by Scorpio and Pisces, there's something expanding. There's something ethereal and otherly that can come home to roost in this space. So it can be healing. It can be spiritual. It could be just deeply inspiring. You might feel moved to get into art, get into poetry, because these are also spaces where we lose ourselves, whether it's dance or art or music or poetry. This was actually even the true roots of things like Dionysus and Bacchus. Like, we think about these gods, if you know them, they're the gods of wine. But their entire cults were built around people that would, yes, get off their faces, be totally off their faces on wine and things like this. But it was the whole experience. It was the fact that they were inebriated enough not to be, up here with their waking mind. They were relaxed in a very different way. They would dance, they would sing, they would kind of congregate in groups and move from town to town, playing music and basically having a 24/7 party. But they believed it to be transcendental, that they were accessing something greater. It's not something that's actually very well respected in our well-to-do society these days, because that's not the done thing. But suffice it to say that that kind of Dionysus leaning towards losing ourselves in something has been a part of human culture for many thousands of years. And I don't think we're going to get rid of it anytime soon, and I don't hope we will. So all of this to say that I just think that this moon has a lot built into the back of it that's really quite lovely and otherly and expansive. Possibly my only caveat here is that Jupiter's retrograde in Scorpio. So the vision should have been contracting by now. And Sagittarius is more big picture. Its opposite sign, Gemini, is tiny picture. Like little bits and bobs and pieces of information. Sagittarius is like the truth, the whole thing. They want to know it all, to understand it all. They have a quite expansive way of approaching everything. So when I'm thinking about this chart and I'm thinking about what the full moon is about, I'm thinking that there is this grand vision promised by Jupiter, trine, Neptune. There's this big something creative, inspiring, spiritual, otherly. But Jupiter in Scorpio is retracted in retrograde. Our focus and our intensity needs to become smaller. The vision will grow in respect of how granular our processes become. And with that kind of process, we might see what's missing. So that, the full light of the moon, full moons are where we have full clarity, full vision. I think we're going to see here where we need to head, where growth is possible. Yes, where the dream and the meaning and all of these things can find a place in the ideal, where spirituality can be accessed, where art and creativity can be generated in very, very rich, fertile ways. But I think what the full moon in Sagittarius is really about is seeing what else needs to be done, seeing where the details have not been taken care of, and kind of doing that bit of homework. So use the vision of the full moon in Sagittarius, this moment of knowing, to calculate what has been done until now, where the point of growth will be, and what creative expenditures will get us there. Sorry, it took me a while to get to that finality point. I think one thing that could probably be let go of, looking at the rest of the chart, is working your little fingers to the bone. Saturn and asteroid Vesta are in a conjunction, and that's usually indicative of like really burdensome, incredible amounts of work, really feeling under it, a sense of being like totally beleaguered, like you've got the world on your shoulders. Both those points are squaring Chiron. So that makes me think that there needs to be some kind of Sagittarian escape or adventure or grand jeté into fun, into experience, into life to kind of release that stuff. The other thing that's happening in this chart is that Mars conjuncting the South Node, something that's going to happen a few times this year. It's part of the Mars retrograde, which I've just turned into astrology.com, and so I'll post in the coming weeks when that's ready to go up. But the dates for that are June 7th, July 20th, and September 25th. So kind of before, during, and after the Mars retrograde. We're kind of coming up to the Mars conjunction between with the South Node, excuse me. Mars in the South Node, you got to release something. You got to let something go. Full moons are perfect for that anyway, for the releasing of things, for the letting go of things. Even if we've been building up towards something, the full moon is the ideal time to kind of put it out there, to kind of click submit, press go. Mars in the South Node, it's like past plans or past ideas about what change would look like, or reconstructions would look like, or any past ideas you used to hold about the future and how it needed to change, or what you wanted, or what would be driving you, like a future idea of motive or ambition. Those are all things that are probably need to be let go, or need a restructure or a change or an idea, or we need to look at that space and see what's going on there and see if we need to make any shifts or changes. So those are really my thoughts. I'm now just going to take a scroll through some of these comments and see if there's anything going on. Ooh, crazy Sag Sun here with Aries Moon and Cancer Rising. Yes, I'm super excited. So for you, Astra Maher, Sagittarius, full moon in Sagittarius will be happening in your 6th house of health, work, and service. So take a look at those spaces. What's positive to me is that there's something about work and money that looks really, really good and like it could grow. And I think it's to foster your earning of money and your creative talents and your nurturing your creative talents, and to let go of anything collaborative. So that could also include other people's money, husband's monies, partner's monies, inheritances or whatever. And there's a move towards like your own money that's fostered through the Sagittarius space. So I hope that helps. And Rebecca, yes, I am attending the moon class, or I am doing the moon class again on June 13th. So if you fancy that, just send me a message or look at the link. Hey, Caitlin. Yes, Cancer Sun, Cat Moon, me too. Rising Taurus, Kate Matson. Rising Taurus. Let me flip the chart around. So for you, Miss Kate, this is happening in the 8th house. 8th house is a tricky little spot. It does, funny enough, inversely to what I was telling Astra, the previous lady, the full moon is happening in your 8th house, which is a collaborative space that includes resources that we share with other people, and even mental anguish. It's kind of a tricky little house, but I would reckon it's probably about patterns around money, patterns about other people's money, and it's also about time, energy, efforts, the things that we collaborate on in any kind of way, and how people either show up in that process or they don't. So the full moon being a moment of clarity and a vision and of seeing, you have an opportunity to see exactly how that's happening. Is it happening positively? Is it not? Is there something that needs to change there? There seems to be quite a positive link between the North Node in the 4th house of home, parents and childhood, and the 8th house. So that's something to think about. It could be something to look at, and I'm going to just keep on checking out. Brittany, yes, I talked about Sag rising a little bit earlier in the video, so you can check that out. I'm going to see. What about Gemini rising? Oh, hi, Excel. How are you? So if you're Gemini's rising, that means Gemini rules your first house, and Sagittarius rules your seventh house. Means the full moon is happening in the seventh house. That's a place of partners, committed partnerships, committed relationships. It can be business or romance. This space really embodies the both. And I've always loved this about the seventh house. I always say this, I always repeat it. Because the ancients had a sense of humor, the seventh is marriage partners and open enemies, people we know that hate us. So one thing that can happen on a seventh house full moon is a relationship moment comes to a head. We kind of get a moment of knowing about a relationship. It's like if we, no problem, Kate, if we've been mucking around with something or it's not been very clear, the full moon in Sag is like a moment of like, yes, this is what it's about. This is where the problem is. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a problem either. It can be something positive. And the positivity is likely to come through communication. Not a surprise there. All good relationships require communication. So one thing that could be happening is using communication of any kind, written or spoken, to create increase in a business or romantic partnership. Other things that could be happening, we could have something arise about our siblings or our aunties and uncles. The seventh is also the energy that we give to other people. It's like how we show up for other people in a certain way, what we give out. So that is something that you could be looking at, but that looks where the positivity is. Yes, Kate Matson. Yes, exactly. You got it, girlfriend. There you go. So Amy Grosser, Leo, Sun, Scorpio, Moon, Capricorn ascendant. Lord have mercy on the Capricorn ascendants. I was just writing about you guys. Again, I think it's my Mars retrograde piece. And I was like, I literally opened it with, I wouldn't blame Capricorns right now if you guys winced before, during, and after every horoscope everywhere. You've got Saturn in your sign. You've got Pluto in your sign. You're going to have the Mars retrograde partially happening in your sign. You got shit happening. And not all of it's good. But, Capricorn, you guys are super strong and sturdy. So I'm not so worried about my Cap friends, but I know you guys are under pressure. So full moon is happening in a tough part of the chart if you're a Capricorn rising. It's happening in the 12th house. 12th house is the house of self-undoing. It's a place of affliction, of sorrow. Positively, it can be retreat or isolation. We choose to remove ourselves from society. Less positively, we are removed from society because this house always, or also not always, deals with incarceration, institutionalization, things like that. So sometimes the 12th house can knacker us. A 12th house full moon, we just need to take time out. We need to take a moment. We need to regroup and recharge. So that's my first thought always when I'm looking at a full moon in the 12th. And I will say this, the 12th is also the house of hidden enemies. It's people that the seventh house of marriage partners that is open enemies. And in some ways that's very workable because at least we see those people. We know what they're up to. The 12th is the hidden enemy. In fact, there were ancient systems used to kind of calculate who would do well in an outcome of two people battling against each other. And the way that they would do that is compare the rulers of the first and the 12th house, first being me, myself, and I, the 12th being my hidden enemy. And funny enough, there was some astrologers that had gone through that with Donald Trump's chart, and they say it's one of the reasons why he kind of always seems to come out ahead of miraculously. Like there's always like a Deus ex machina moment for him, no matter what he's gotten himself into or how deep a well he's gotten himself into. So I've gone off on a tangent, but the 12th can be difficult because hidden enemies, you don't really know they're there. But most people's hidden enemy is themselves. The other side of myself, the dark mirror of myself, my shadow. I think the shadow really sits most firmly in the 12th, but it can live in other places in the chart. And there I'm talking about the shadow as per Carl Jung and people like that. So I'm thinking about retreat and isolation for you. I'm thinking about tending the wounds of the mind or the soul by retreat or isolation as best you can. And that would be my thoughts for you. And I'm going backwards. Aquarius, Sun and Rising. Hello, Victoria. So Aquarius, let's spin ourselves around. That puts the full moon in Sagittarius in your 11th house of friends, groups, collectives. So what that feels like to me is a moment of knowing when it comes to friends or groups. It can be a fruition moment, which can be really nice, like a friendship that blossoms into something, or a group association that blossoms into something in a way that feels positive or healing somehow. And it seems like there's a good relationship between that house and the house of the seventh house of marriage partners. So does a friend become a lover? I don't know. Do you meet somebody special in a group of people? Or do you just feel really satisfied and healed and that you have a lot to give to this group, and vice versa? There's a part of this house has to do with activism and even charity, and like really hope. There's hopeful intent here. So there could be other things there in that area. Yes, no problem. Thank you. No worries. Thanks, Amy. Dan Johnson, Rising Capricorn, we've already done, so you can look back at Capricorn or listen back to that when you have a second. Carly Browner, hello, Miss Carly. We just did the opposite. Now, Aquarius is the opposite sign of Leo. We'll now do Leo because Miss Carly is a Leo rising. This is fun. This is fun, Carly. I hope you're going to have fun with this. So the full moon in Sagittarius is happening in the 5th house of sex. Ooh. Risk, pleasure, pleasures of the body, having a good time and feeling bad about none of it. Shop too much, eat too much, have too much sex, and love it all. That is the 5th house. It is an indulgent space. It's a fun space. It's also very creative. It's artistic. It's expressive. It's anything of enjoyment, concerts, theater, entertainment, fun times. And it's also the house of children. So if you ain't want no babies, you better back off all that. But 5th house, it's making a really beautiful aspect to your 1st house of self. So this feels like fun, indulgent, me time, enjoying yourself. The 5th can be a moment of illumination in those habits, though. I will say that, like if we've been a bit too indulgent or a bit too risky with certain things, including the horizontal tango, then that can come to light. But it doesn't look that way. I mean, the aspect between Sagittarius and Leo is really, really good. So, yeah, I just hope you have fun with that. That's all. Yes, Neha, you hopped on right at the perfect time. Hope you enjoyed Leo. And I'm going to go backwards, see if there's any more. Jane Swift, thoughts on Sag and 3rd house of communication, Cancer Sun, Libra rising. Libra, we haven't done Libra, so I will indulge you. Libra rising, you are very correct. That puts Sagittarius in 3rd house of writing, communication, siblings, neighbors, your community vibe. Short distance travel. This was also known as the house of goddess. Its opposite house was often called the house of God. So the positivity and the growth is panning out between 3, 2, 1, 12, 11. Communication in groups. If you're writing or communicating to a group, go for it. Gun it. Turn on the charm. Also, it could be neighborhood activism or community outreach or being involved in your community. That's something that's really overlooked with the 3rd house, because the 3rd house is like the space and the place that we know. This is my hood. I know it. I know this dude that works at the shop on the corner. I know that guy, even the crazy dude. I know that crazy guy that tracks around here like this. The 3rd house is the space and the places that we inhabit. We know, we're familiar. We feel safe and comfortable. The opposite house is everywhere we get stretched and we're like, ooh, I'm encountering otherness and I don't know this world. I don't know this land. Hence why foreign places and people are in the 9th. So Sag trine to Leo. And the 11th, again, my first thing I think about is writing and speaking to groups in some way, and how that might pan out. And I would say just, get out there and do it, write it. It's also a very hopeful house, a very aspirational, positive leaning house that looks to the future. So if you are writing or creating or communicating or doing something in this community beat, like it feels good and it feels hopeful. So try to use that energy as best you can. So Pisces rising. Hello, Barbara Mom. I haven't talked to you in ages. Okay, so Pisces rising. Flipping my old chart around. Pisces rising means full house in the full moon in the 10th house. 10th house of career, of your reputation, of honors, of what you do at work out in the world. And it looks like a positive increase between the 10th house and the 6th. So you've been slugging it out. You have been working really hard. You've been working towards and nurturing something more expressive at work, or something that perhaps just has more integrity, that you feel more aligned with, that feels right to you. And that seems to be the positive connection there for Pisces rising, because Sag is in full moon. So there's a moment of illumination and knowing in the career, and something powerful there. Let me go down here. And yes, Carly Browner, the next moon class is June 13th. Would love to have you with me, as always. Nice to hear from you. Virgo Sun, Scorpio rising. Rochelle Annette, Miss Rochelle. I love the name Rochelle. I don't think we've done Scorpio rising, so I will do it now. This is about yo money, honey. Full moon is in the second house of cash dollars, or your own money, your assets, your wealth, your salary, your income. And I also put here, I kind of put here as well, talents and self-esteem. It's the things because your talents are of value. In fact, in the Bible, if anybody's got an old Bible, a talent used to be a measure of weight, and it was an incredibly heavy weight, which I always love as an idea about our talents, because our talents are not just something that are like frivolous. Talents are a weight because we need to be responsible to them, and we need to develop them and cultivate them. So there's something going on with your money, Rochelle, and your career, but it looks like a positive link. It looks like there's growth. Anyway, you've had eclipses going around the 10th house of career for some time. It could have created bumps in your career, but my hope is that with a north node there, magnetizing that space, you have been moving more towards a positive career growth. And that this full moon is making those connections and presenting an opportunity for you to see what else can be nurtured and fostered in that space. Gabriel William, Cancer rising. I did Cancer rising earlier in the video. You can watch that. And Gemini rising, Jessica. Also, I did Gemini. Did I do Gemini? Yes, I did Gemini. Yes, I did Gemini. So you can look back at that and see what you think about that. Rochelle, I'm glad that you enjoyed that. So I think I'm going to call it, I'm going to call this baby done and cooked, my friends. As always, such a pleasure to be here with you guys. Again, I'll be on holiday for a week upcoming, but I've got the moon class coming up. I've got articles on the Neptune retrograde and the Mars retrograde, which is really particularly important, coming up. Those will be on astrology.com pretty soon. And otherwise, we'll hope to see you guys in a couple weeks' time, and I will be all refreshed. So lots of love to you guys, and I will see you soon. Bye.